You're now listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Adam Keys. Please hit the like button, please hit subscribe, and let's talk about Thomas Partey and Declan Rice and why they can win Arsenal the Premier League. So Thomas Partey came on against Wolverhampton in the 79th minute. Massive impact on the game because at that point of the game, Arsenal were starting to feel a bit nervy and we needed something. We needed that bit of solidity, that calmness in midfield, and Thomas was the man that brought it. What was interesting was Declan Rice had played very much in that sixth role throughout the game, with Kai at 8, Ødegaard at the right 8 position, and Jesus up front. Jesus in the 9 position was erratic. He was all over the place. He was frenetic. He was frantic in his positioning, frantic in his touches. Everything that we love about Jesus, the chaos, but it was also creating chaos for Arsenal and not just Wolverhampton. So when Thomas Partey came on, it made a very big impact straight away. And many will look at Thomas's performance with the 7 touches, 100% pass completion rate, and think he didn't actually do that much. But I disagree on that, and I think Thomas showed enough in this game to make me believe that he can have a major impact in the remaining 5 games, and that him and Declan Rice could be the 2 players, if played together, that ultimately win Arsenal the Premier League title. Controversial, but there's everything to play for, and it starts against Chelsea. So we're going to have a look at the key actions in the game from when Thomas came on the pitch, because this actually played a massive role in Arsenal winning the game and seeing it out at 1-0 and ultimately going on and scoring the second. So, first up, one of Thomas's first actions in the game, not long after he came on, ball headed back from, cleared from the Wolves defender. It's coming down the pitch. Partey sees it coming. A lot of players, as we saw during this game, just head it straight back into the opposition half, give it to a Wolves player. They get the ball, get it down, keep playing, keep it moving, put Arsenal under more pressure. Thomas Partey is fully aware of where the 2 players around him are. You can see Rice circled, you can see Partey circled. Rice is very much in that 8 position at this point. Partey just gets it, takes it in his chest and turns, gives a very, very simple pass off to Gabriel. This might not seem like much, but this awareness, this calmness is what top players have. And this is the first time that we've seen Thomas on the pitch for a while where he's looked like he's free and aware of his surroundings. Because up until now, he's looked stiff, he's looked laboured, and he hasn't looked match fit. And that's been one of the issues. It hasn't been his ability on the pitch. It's been the fact that he doesn't look match fit, which has led to people questioning whether Arteta trusts him. This is a player that Arteta repeatedly rushed back, got into the team at any possible moment, got Arsenal to pay a release clause in full for him and built the Arsenal midfield around him. Arteta trusts this player explicitly. The issue is he's not match fit, and he hasn't been up until this point. But when he came on against Wolves, it was the first time he looked like he was running without having to hold something back. When he was turning, it looked like he was free. He looked like he was turning to play. And we saw that repeatedly throughout the game. This is another example. Wolves clearance. Thomas is in the right position to receive. He gets the ball and he just turns very simply and gives it out to Saliba. Takes the it away from a congested Wolves area. Simple pass allows Saliba to play that ball out to Ben White. Again, these are very, very simple actions, but this is what top players do. They position themselves in the right place. And if you look at the zones that he's in both of these, the first slide and this one, he's very much in the center, in that 6th position, disciplined, and he understands his zone of the pitch. He dominates his zone of the pitch. And again, Rice is in that 8, and he's about 10, 15 yards away from him and can comfortably take the pass off him. And this continued throughout the game with Rice being further up. We saw it later in the game. Arsenal have a throw in. You can see Kivior's got 2 options in the first graphic with Thomas Partey and Declan Rice in the 8. The ball moves up the park. It's Declan Rice that gets it very high up the park. He gets it, ends up going out for another throw in. But because Thomas Partey's on the pitch, Rice has suddenly been freed to go up and press, counter press, and win the ball and keep Wolves penned into their own box, keep them penned into their own defensive third, and ultimately keep the ball away from the Arsenal goal. And at this point, Wolves stopped offering any threat whatsoever. And suddenly, Arsenal had a lot more threat going forward. And we saw this very quickly as the game went on. This is where we spent the latter part of the game, was in the Wolves half. So minutes later, again, Declan Rice gets the ball. You can see a bit of Thomas Partey in the middle graphic. Again, dominating that middle zone, right in the middle of the pitch. He is central with everything. He is a true 6 in this position. But Rice gets the ball. He comes back. He wins it off the Wolves player, turns and he drives, gets his head down, literally drives with aggression and power across the box, and he puts a great cross into the box. And this is where you're begging for your centre forward to be. Usually Kai Havertz is breaking his neck to be in that position, and that's where we saw him score a lot of goals, was attacking the 6-yard box. He was fantastic at it whenever we were really scoring goals. On this occasion, I think there was a lot of tired legs out there. No one really attacked that space, but Declan puts in his first-class ball. That's a striker's dream. You're tapping it into an empty net if you can reach that pass. No one gambles. Saka doesn't gamble. Saka tries to come towards the penalty spot. Had he have gone for the back post, he taps that in, and it's 2-0 Arsenal, game over. But it wasn't to be. But it showed, with Partey on the pitch and him taking that central zone, what Declan Rice could do. He suddenly stopped having to just focus on being central and start being allowed to move forward and let Arsenal attack. And again, we saw this throughout the game. As it went on, 92nd minute, you can see Partey receives. He has a quick look over his shoulder. He turns to go and give it, sees the space closing down. He thinks, no, you know what? No risks. I'm just going to tap this ball out to Gabriel, and we will move the ball up the pitch slowly. That's a key part of Partey's game that's going to grow this season. Last year, he probably drops his shoulder very quickly there, as we saw against West Ham last year when he was playing against Declan Rice, and we ultimately conceded a penalty. The instructions and the risk this year has lowered. We're a team that plays in a much more conservative style. We play a much more slow, controlled, measured build-up. We have done a lot to take away the element of risk in our team, which is why we've conceded the least goals in the league. And at this point of the game, this was Partey using all his experience. There's a very quick scan there. He's looking, he's aware of his surroundings. He gets the ball. What does he want to do? He wants to move into space, and he wants to give it to a teammate and make sure that we hold on to the ball. He's not going to do anything to risk anything late in the game, and he doesn't. He just gives it sideways to Gabriel, and we keep the ball moving. And again, moments later, you can see in this one, again, Rice comes back, nicks the ball from his man, and then he's got it. But you can see, look at the distance between Rice and Partey at this point. Again, Partey's a true 6 in this position. Rice is out in the very much at the wing. He's got it, and he doesn't take any risks. He can give it back to Partey. Instead, he's thinking, you know what, let's buy a cheap throw-in. We'll get it. We'll have a breather, and we'll continue to play. We don't want any risks at this point of the game. And Thomas Partey being on the pitch has allowed Declan Rice to do these things, because he was a player right before Thomas Partey came on. I was in the stands, and I said to the guy next to me, he looks absolutely exhausted. He was trudging along. His legs looked heavy. He looked like he was blowing hard. And he looked like a player that probably should have been coming off. Suddenly, Thomas Partey came on the pitch. It was like a different animal. Suddenly, Declan Rice had this energy that he hadn't had up to that point, in the second half anyway. And he just looked reborn. He was able to do a different role. He was able to move the ball. He was able to progress it. And Thomas Partey was there to receive and be that safety net behind him and just be a real calm and controlling presence in the 6th position. And as you can see, we end up winning the throw, and it's advantage Arsenal once again. Moments later, we see Declan Rice get the ball. And what's interesting about all of these, again, Partey in the 6, right behind Rice. Rice gets the ball. He starts driving into space. He takes a look up. Martinelli's running around the outside, and he plays a perfect pass into him. And this is one of those, Martinelli probably should cross the ball. But look, he's a player that can score goals in these positions. I'm not going to criticize him for it. If anything, I was really hoping Martinelli was going to put this ball in the back of the net, because I feel he's a player that needs a goal more than anyone. And I think the whole of the away end would have been absolutely delighted had he have buried this one, because, again, we all want to see Martinelli on the score sheet. He takes the chance to save from the keeper, but this was an example of what Rice can do in the 8th position, and having that big physical presence behind him in Thomas Partey, and also a very calming presence that knows Saliba and Gabriel. and understands how we want to play, that's very important. And this, just having Partey on the pitch really freed Rice up. And I don't think if we brought Zinchenko on, it would have had the same impact, or Jorginho, because neither of them have the same legs as Partey. And to bring them on late in the game, it would have been a big risk. Now, Thomas Partey still has a lack of minutes in his legs. He's a player that we haven't truly seen running backwards yet. We haven't seen how he'll cope with a full 90 minutes. But he's a player that you could see that he's finally moving freely. And there comes a point where Arteta does have to trust players, and he has to look at them and think, right, I've slowly been building up his minutes. If there's tired legs, am I better playing Thomas Partey, or am I better sticking with Jorginho and maybe restricting Rice's role slightly? So by playing Thomas Partey in this position and just keeping that constant discipline, Declan Rice was freed up. And these were two big moments that we saw, the cross and then this within minutes of each other. Then not long after that, once again, Declan Rice gets the ball in the middle of the park. Key thing, first graphic, what do you see? You see Rice and Partey, 10 yards apart? You see the white arrow pointing to the two of them. Whereas Thomas Partey, he is in that 6 central zone. He is dominating the space. He knows where everyone is around him. You can see quick scan. He's looking. Does he need to take it? No, it goes to Declan Rice, and he drops his shoulder and turns and charges forward. He runs straight at the middle of the Wolves defense, at which point you can see the defender in the final graphic. He doesn't know where to go. Does he come forward to attack him, to close them down, or does he hold on to it and just hold his position and wait and see what Rice does? He ends up not doing neither. And this happens quite often when a defender is run backwards. They don't know whether to keep running backwards or to turn and face. In this occasion, he's ran backwards quite some way and ultimately decided to turn and face. But meanwhile, the two defenders either side of him have continued to go backwards, and Rice has created a chaos in the Wolves' back line. But again, what you can see is Thomas Partey is holding that space. He's allowing Rice to go forward. If Rice loses the ball, Thomas Partey is still in that central area of the pitch. He's still dominating that zone. And this is something that's very important. If Rice, you can see, if Wolves cut this pass out that goes to Havertz, it's fine. If they clear it, they've suddenly got a lot of players back. They're going to have to kick it long. Saliba and Gabriel have Thomas Partey to look to. Ben White's covering on the right. We've suddenly got real security across that back four with the player and Partey ahead of them. Rice ultimately gets his pass right. He plays it into Havertz, who passes to Ødegaard. Ødegaard's shot's rebounded, and he taps in a beautiful little curled effort into the bottom corner from a really tight angle, just showing his quality. But the key thing for me in what I've shown you so far isn't Thomas Partey's ball progression. It isn't his ability to play those line-breaking vertical passes that we've all fallen in love with. What I saw from Thomas Partey on Saturday that really convinced me he was ready to play again and he could be a player that helps win Arsenal the league was a player that offered security in that 6th position. Because the line-breaking passes are great, especially against a mid-block. Against a low block, because everyone's so deep, you don't get as much opportunity to play them. You're still passing into a congested area. But against a mid-block, it's something that can really break things up and really cause the opposition to get unsettled, and it allows the likes of Ødegaard space to play because the team is playing slightly higher up the park than they would be in a low block, which is what we face quite often. But in this, we saw Thomas Partey just offering real security and real maturity and calmness, which is what we really need at this point of the season. Everyone's tired. There's a lot of tired legs and bodies. If Thomas starts a game, we are going to see him probably after 60 minutes really starting to feel the physical effects. But mentally, he's coming out fresh and ready to prove himself and prove that he's ready to play. He's going to want to get minutes in his legs as the season goes on. He's going to want to show and contribute this season. So if he's able to get on the pitch, he's someone that's going to be fired up and ready. But there is risk that comes with bringing in someone that has been out so long because it does disrupt things. And managers trust players that have got them to where they are. But just to finally wrap up, a graphic that has been going around is the Arsenal minutes this season. So as you can see here, William Saliba, Gabriel, Declan Rice have all played over 3,500 Premier League and Champions League minutes for Arsenal this season. That is high. However, we seeing players that win titles and win trophies go above 4,000 minutes isn't unheard of. It isn't unusual. And we've seen these players play a lot of minutes before. Gabriel always plays a lot of minutes. Declan Rice always plays a lot of minutes, as does Martin Ødegaard, Ben White. These players are highly reliable. And the one worry that everyone will point to is Bukayo Saka, but that's not who we're discussing here. Thomas Partey, by contrast, has only played 372 minutes this season. There are minutes in those legs, and will want to get as many in as possible between now and the end of the season. He's an Arsenal fan. He came to us whenever we needed him most, when things weren't good, and he's going to want to contribute and try and help Arsenal win the Premier League title. Interestingly, he has played more minutes than Smith Rowe and Fabio Vieira this season, despite being out for the majority of the season. So when people say Arteta doesn't trust Thomas Partey, look at this graphic. Look at the volume of football Thomas Partey has missed, and he has still managed to play more minutes than a player Arteta signed for 35 million and a player that Arteta gave a big contract to and give the number 10 shirt at Arsenal. So look, this is something we don't know the true ins and outs of player fitness. We don't fully understand it because we don't have the data. We don't know how fit players are. We don't know what they're doing on the training ground. But what we can see from our eyes is that Thomas Partey now looks fit, he looks sharp, he looks mobile, and he looks like a player ready to play and contribute. And for the remaining games, a midfield of Rice, Partey, and Martin Ødegaard would be huge. And if Partey starts to feel those effects on his legs, there is Jorginho there as well. There is Kai that can drop into midfield. We've got options. There are Smith Rowes and Vieiras on the bench. Whether they're trusted or not is another story, and that's a whole different discussion. But one thing that I have no doubt about is that Mikel trusts Thomas Partey. It's whether or not he felt he was ready up until this point. And once he is in the team, there's a good chance we will start to see him play a lot more. There are only a few games left, but Thomas Partey is a player that alongside Declan Rice and Martin Ødegaard could win Arsenal the Premier League title. Look, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. There are people watching live, so please make sure you like it. Drop us a comment. Tell us what you think about this. Is that a trio that can really help Arsenal get over the line in the last 5 games of the season? What are your thoughts on this? How good is Thomas Partey? How ready is he? And how well do you think he will work with Declan Rice? But look, thank you to everyone that's joined us and watched so far. It's been great having you. Please join us again for the next show, where we will do another deep dive into player fitness with a very special guest, and we will be back very soon. So have a good night. Thank you.